We're going to do a broad overview on remote interviewing and just the interview process itself. My name is Alex Gutierrez. I'm Senior Associate Director for Career Services, and I would love my esteemed co-presenters to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jamie Jensen. I am the lead career success coach for Career Services at Boise State University.
Hi, I'm Lisa Southorn. I am a recruiter here in the Treasure Valley. I recruit for Lamb Weston and previously recruited for Clearwater Analytics.
Great. And so again, I'm Alex Gutierrez, and let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about what we're talking about today. So we broke it up into 4 main topics, which is pre-interview preparation, the day of the interview, interview success strategies, and then the types of questions that you may ask. And after all that, then we'll open it up for Q&A. So with remote interviewing, this is not a new technology or a new phenomenon that's happening. A lot of companies and organizations have been using it for many years. Usually it's screening a large amount of folks. It's, it can be a cost savings. Here at Boise State, when we're interviewing candidates, we've done remote interviewing using like Google Chat, Google Chat or Google Hangouts, Skype. Zoom is now the big thing. But this has been around for a while. But what's different now is that most interviews, and even to potentially the interviews that the final interview, are probably going to be Zoom for health reasons, some other things. So we really want to prepare you for that and getting to that. So in preparation, a couple things to really think about, and just kind of like the nuts and bolts of things. So you get a call from a recruiter and says, hey, I want to interview you. Yeah, we want to interview you. We're excited about your candidacy. We'd like to interview you at 1 p.m. And you're going, great. But the person maybe is from Seattle, could be from, Portland, could be from Chicago. What's the time zone? What time is it? So when they say 1 p.m., you want to make sure you confirm the time zone, and make sure whoever you're working with, as far as the handler or the HR person, you want to make sure you have all those confirmed. You want to make sure you have the right video conferencing application and software. That's going to be really important. Making sure that you know how to use it. I think that's going to be important. And you want to make sure you have all the correct links. So like when you signed into this, there was a link in there that got you there. So you want to make sure everything is correct as you go forward. You want to make sure you also have the right equipment. And equipment can be everything from your laptop to a desktop to iPad or some kind of a mobile device, your phone. You want to make sure your camera and your audio are working. And huge advice, practice using the conferencing software and application process, the equipment. You want to make sure that the first time you use it is not your interview. So whether you are reaching into your roommates or your roommate, your family, your friends, or Career Services, we're there to help you go through this process. And we'll make sure that everything that, you are, hey, look at this. And we have experience using a variety of different things, but we can help you go through that as well. Also, you want to identify a place where you'll be during the interview. You want to make sure you're going to be isolated. You want to eliminate any kind of distractions. You want to, if it's garbage day, you don't want to be in the front of your house when, the garbage truck's coming by, or, they're mowing the lawns or doing anything. So you want to make sure that when you're interviewing, the interviewer is focusing on you. And then your background. You want to, this is an opportunity to be really show your brand, but you want to make sure it's clean. You want to make sure that the distractions that I am focusing, if I'm the recruiter, I'm focusing on you. I'm not focusing on that movie poster behind you or something else like, ooh, you want the attention to be on you. So making sure it's clean, making sure, I want to use Mary in my office. She actually presented yesterday on resumes, but she is was a online career counselor in Georgia, but her background is really phenomenal. It looks like she's at Boise State. She has some really great things, but when you talk to her, you're talking to her. So it doesn't take away, but it just really shows her brand. You want to check lighting. If you've ever been on any of these and somebody has the light, behind them, you just see a shadow, and that's just that's also going to be distracting. So you want to make sure you don't have anything like a window behind you or bright light behind you that just really puts a silhouette, but not a face out there. You want to be visible. And so letting people know, hey, I'm going to be interviewing next Tuesday. So if you make sure you are out and make sure, or whatever. So it's family, roommates, friends, all those things. You want to, again, eliminate as much distractions as possible. In fact, it should be a requirement. And then as all good plans happen, some things can happen to you. So, if you're here in Boise, you know that we get a little microburst. And so you want to make sure, and so sometimes electricity goes out. So you want to make sure that you have a backup plan ready. So in case electricity fails or something else, you want to have a phone call or a phone number for somebody you can call and say, hey, my electricity just went out. Can I connect again? Can I utilize my phone? So you want to make sure you have emails, phone numbers of people you can contact in case anything happens. Having an extra battery or just access to power source is going to be important, because sometimes, like even when I'm working on my phone or I'm having a chat with a friend on the phone, my battery life goes down really quick. So you want to make sure that everything is charged up. So what if you don't have a computer or a video capability? Any kind of equipment, because now, hey, your computer was old, you got it 4 or 5 years ago and everything died. You want to address that ahead of time. Address that with your representative who you're talking to and saying, hey, I don't have a phone, I don't have a laptop or an iPad. Can I do this over a phone, over my phone? If that's not a possibility, I mean, is there somewhere you can borrow something from somebody? But you want to address that ahead of time. And then if you were able to get some type of a laptop or borrow something from somebody, you want to confirm that back with the HR rep. So one of the things when we were preparing for Career Launch Week, one of the things that came up was, how do we prepare students for the current events? We don't want to ignore it. It's the elephant in the room. And we don't want to ignore all the stuff that's happened. And one of the questions that comes up that we ask employer panels is like, what if a student's applying for a job and is kind of afraid to go into work because of health concerns or whatever? So with the COVID-19 epidemic, understanding like what have you been doing during this time? How did you adjust? That may actually be even a question that can come up to you. So being able to address, one of the things that we did is we shifted all to online and remote learning, and it was a little tough, but I adapted and I ended up getting an A in the class. So there's ways that you can address that. And then in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of protest and things for, and I'm not getting political here, but there's been a lot of things for social justice. And so if you've been involved with any of the protests or anything, and this is something that really is important to you, I mean, obviously that's great. And but maybe it's something unfortunate. Maybe you got arrested. That probably won't come up on any kind of background check, but potentially something is posted on a social media. Really, I mean, acknowledge it, own it, but you don't have to get into some details. I was talking to Lisa right before this, and that was kind of her advice is, you don't have to get involved in details. But again, if these are things that are very important to you, these are things that you can research the organization, and kind of find out what their stance is. Potentially at the end, it could be a question like, how did you protect what were the process to protecting your employees during the COVID? What did you guys do? How did you adjust to remote working? And so anyways, those are kinds of things that be prepared to be able to answer questions or even ask questions with that. So I'm going to leave it at that. So I'll leave it to Jamie.
All right, so the day of the interview is here. What can you do to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible? Let's check that out. So a couple things to think about. It's important to plan ahead what you're going to wear. You don't want to be rushing that morning or right before to figure out something that may or may not look good. It's important to think about how is your outfit going to show up on camera. If you wear something really bright and there's some reflection, it can be overwhelming to the interviewers and be kind of distracting. Another thing to think about is if you wear really thin stripes, there's an effect that takes place with the cameras that make them look like they're moving, and that can be really distracting and just not look good. So try and wear something that's not super bright, something fairly plain or solid, and just avoid pattern prints if you can. Also think about who's going to be there. So think about your audience. Is it going to be a really professional company? Is it something that's more casual? That can alter what you're going to wear. If you're not sure how they dress at that location, then do some research or err on the way of being a little bit more professional. You don't want to be underdressed going in. It's better being a little bit overdressed going into your interview. If you're not sure, see if you can find out from somebody, if you can talk to anybody. And then when you know what you want to wear, give it a test run. Turn on your computer camera and see what you look like and see if it's how you want to portray yourself. Next slide. On the day of the interview, like Alex said earlier, remind people that you're going to be in an interview. Put a sticky note on the door, some sort of indication that, hey, I'm in here, please don't interrupt me. Also check your camera and audio settings. With most applications, we're using Zoom today. There's a way you can test your audio and your video to make sure that they're working. You can try the audio with either using a headset or with just the camera on your computer. Also make sure that notifications are turned off on your computer and on your phone. Sometimes those can pop up and either make a loud noise or just be distracting if you see something going on your computer screen. That can take your attention off of what's going on during the interview. Also, if there are noises going on outside, like lawn mowing, garbage truck, dogs or kids playing, acknowledge it. It's better just to say, hey, there's some stuff going on outside. Just wanted to let you know. It's better to acknowledge it than just ignore it and hope that it's not noticed, because it likely is noticed. Also, make sure your phone is silenced, because any vibrations, if you have it on the vibrate mode, those can buzz your desk, which are picked up by your camera and your audio as well. When you're talking, it's important to slow down your pace, especially if you're nervous. You can start talking really quickly, and then it can be difficult to understand what you're saying if you're talking too fast. Some microphones are better than others in picking up your voice, and so if you have a microphone that's not great and you're talking really fast, that can be distracting or hard for the interviewers to really hear what you're saying. So try to enunciate, speak clearly, take a breath, and be as natural as possible, but not super fast. Also, when you're talking on one of these video types of chats, it's really easy for there to be a delay and people to start talking over each other. So if you find yourself talking over the interviewer, just stop if you need to ask what the question was again or clarify something. Feel free to do that, but try to be conscious in how your voice is coming across on screen. And a couple other things to think about. As you're setting up your work environment, try to put the camera at eye level. So when you're talking, you're looking right into the camera, not at the screen where the video is. If you have a laptop that you're using, set up some books or some boxes to have it higher. Or if you're using your phone, same thing. If you have a camera that is something you can set someplace else, set that up either on your monitor or in a location when you can easily look at that. look right into the camera and talking. It's really hard to do that at first. You tend to want to look at the person you're talking to, but then it looks like you're looking below that person's eye level. Also be reflective, nod, be engaging, act like there's someone really there that you're communicating with. And as Alex said earlier, make sure everything is charged, plugged in, fully functioning. Close your other applications, especially if you're using your phone for an interview, so there's not something that happens where maybe you get a phone call or some sort of text alert comes up that may shut down your interview. And now we'll go to Lisa.
Great. You guys have shared some really helpful tips, I think, for interviewers. And a lot of the stuff really translates from your typical interviews to the video interviews, but it's always so good to go through this information. And I want to talk about those, successful interviewing tips. So really, going into the interview, you really think about these 5 B's. I love this. It's, be professional, be prepared, be friendly, and be engaging, and be gracious. It just as uncomfortable it is for you to jump in and be doing a video interview, it's probably just as uncomfortable for the person on the other end who's not used to doing that either. So I start out backwards. I start with the be gracious. Everyone knows that this is a, kind of an awkward situation for people to go through. So, if some noise does come up, like you mentioned earlier, people are going to expect it, and you can kind of laugh it off and move forward with the interview. Right now is the time to show your personality, right? Be friendly, be engaging, make sure that you stand out to them, because they may be interviewing other candidates this way, and they're going to remember the person who was very friendly yet professional and really kind of stood out and made that connection with them during this time. Next slide. Okay, great. So prior to the interview and the day of, you really should have already done your research on the company, so that understanding the job description, knowing what the position is, and why you want to work there. That is so important. As you're interviewing, they really want to know what stood out about this position that you really kind of captured your attention. And I recommend having that job description with you. Print it out, keep it with you if you can, make some notes, because they may ask you questions about the job description. And what's great is on the video interview, you can have all these tools in front of you. And you don't feel like you need to bring them with you. You don't need to show them everything that you've prepared, but make sure that you do prepare. Know about the organization. So whether that's talking to folks that already work there or people who may be familiar with it in the industry, get a good feel of what the company is like, questions that you may want to ask about that organization. Definitely come to the interview knowing yourself, know your skill set, know your strengths and your weaknesses, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But really, why should you be that person who gets the job? These are all things that you don't want to think of on the spot. You want to know this before you're going in, and it'll really help calm your nerves as well. So I have developed a little strategy, and I actually got this from somebody who I interviewed in the past. Put little sticky notes around your computer. It makes it really easy to jog your memory on things that you wanted to highlight during that time. Make sure that they're not lengthy because you won't have time to be reading notes, but if you leave yourself a few keywords or a few questions that you had wanted to ask, that'll definitely kind of help keep your mind on track and make sure you cover every point that you wanted to. Next slide. Great. So the articulation of your skills, knowledge, abilities, this is extremely important, especially if you are coming out of college, right? You typically won't have a ton of experience. A lot of what you have been doing is academic, and you have all these different opportunities that you've experienced through your time in college. So be prepared and know how you're going to talk about those. Again, make yourself a little sticky note and put down a few of the opportunities that you've had a chance to be involved with that you think would really translate well to the position. Okay, so going into a little more detail, some examples. So again, looking at that job description, highlighting the skills that they were looking for in that role. So if you can highlight those ahead of time and then think about how your experiences have really demonstrated that skill set. So again, that pre-preparation, so you may want to know, I did an internship with this, XYZ corporation, and that was really beneficial to my experience. Any volunteer work that you've done, service learning, again, a few other examples, extracurricular, study abroad, and your personal experiences. All of these things really make up you as an individual, and they set you apart from all of the other candidates in the mix. So really be comfortable talking about these, and not just the role that you had or the actual experience. Talk about what it developed in you. What did you get out of it? What areas did maybe it open your eyes to that you had not a lot of information about before? Next slide. Okay. Going back to the professional point, we talked a little bit about that earlier, but so important that you're on time. And in video interviewing, on time isn't showing up at the time that the interview is scheduled. It means arriving a good 10 minutes ahead of time, making sure that area is set up nicely, making sure that you can connect, because in video interviews, if something could go wrong, there's a good chance it will go wrong. So if you jump on a few minutes early, you're able to identify things like if your audio is on mute, or maybe something in your interview situation changes. You have to, at the last minute, change room where you're at or location. Those kinds of things being early will give you that ability to jump in, make sure everything's running smoothly. And it really kind of sets a great tone for the beginning of that interview. Again, smile, be friendly, be engaging. You want them to remember you as that person that really was just dynamic in personality. And then with video, you kind of have to push it a little bit more in order to get that across. As far as the interview conversation, as you're going through, there can be some challenges. Maybe the audio on the other end isn't coming across as well as you hoped. So there could be some issues there. And if you are listening to somebody and the message gets cut off, or it is hard to understand, don't be afraid to ask them to repeat the question. Maybe ask the question in a different way, rephrase the question to them, to make sure that that communication is on par there, because they may be asking a question, you take it another way, and then they go, oh, they didn't really answer my question. Again, maintain appropriate posture. So it's really easy when you're having these calls to lean into the call, or maybe, you kind of start tilting to the side there. So just be aware of your posture and keep yourself in a really professional stance. Another way to show professionalism is, again, after the interview, nothing changes. You still want to follow up with a nice note, whether it be via email or sending it through the mail. That's always one thing that has always stood out to me about candidates, is getting that follow-up message, because it truly lets me know that they're very interested in this role. It reminds me that they're out there, and will definitely leave a lasting impression.
So,
Okay.
types of interview questions. We are going to talk about the four main types, which are common questions, behavioral questions, scenario questions, or stress questions, and stress questions. So examples of common questions that are out there. So when we're working with students and we're preparing interview strategies, or just going through a mock interview, like that first question, tell me about yourself. Oh, I hate that question. I got that question, last time, and I didn't know how to answer that. Why are you interested in this position? Why should we hire you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your short and long-term goals? Questions for us. All of these are just those common questions that you can expect and you should prepare for. So thinking about the tell me about yourself question, you know, easily this is a question that's probably going to be asked probably 99% of the time. Every once in a while I hear somebody like, oh, they didn't ask that question. I'm like, wow. Anyways, so think about your past. What did you do? How did you get started? How did you get passionate about whatever you studied? You know, what kinds of experiences? So thinking about what kinds of experiences you did that started leading up to where you are now. So thinking about the kinds of things that you studied, things that you did as far as experiential learning or internships, any of those kinds of things, your job, projects you worked on, and then where do you want to be? So that's the present, and then thinking about the future, where do you want to be? What are you looking for? What are you seeking in an organization, in a job? So past, present, and future is a good way to look at that. I personally think the most important question that you should know is why should we hire you? And so, because that's what everything else is based on. So thinking about, you know, and if you give me an answer like, you know, I'm really good with people, I'm a strong communicator, and I have a great work ethic, that tells me nothing about you. And so what about, you know, your ability to work with people? So with my group projects, you know, I really love people, but I also like leading, but, you know, I'm also a good person that people can depend upon. And so now you can give me some examples about that. Give me some examples that tell me about your leadership roles you've taken, or the ability to be dependent upon to get a project done on time. You can pull in your group projects, you can pull in your internships, your jobs, any of that. When you talk about communication, you know, I've really learned how to communicate via email. When I first came in, I was not really strong with that, but now I'm able to communicate and also do presentations. I didn't like that big, but I became a Bronco ambassador. Now something I can speak in front of groups. So all of those things kind of talk a little bit more about why you. Why are you interested in the position? So these are things that, you know, why this position? What being able to give me some solid reasoning about why this is an important role, as well as why us. Why are you looking at us? What about us as a company? We want to hire people that want to be there, right, Lisa?
Exactly.
And so, you know, those are the kinds of things that are going to be important to understand and really know why you're interested in the position and why you're interested in the company. Strengths and weaknesses. You know, you probably have a lot of different strengths, a lot, you know, potentially some weaknesses. But when you're talking about strengths, what are the relevant strengths to the role and to the position? And not just really just say, you know, I'm a strong communicator, or I'm, you know, whatever. Give me an example. So again, if it's, you know, I'm really good at meeting deadlines and paying attention to detail, for example, you know, in my internship, and then you're giving me some examples. Those are going to be important to be able to do. And long and short-term goals, be real about that. What are your short-term goals? What are you looking at to accomplish? What are you looking to learn? And how are you looking to help the organization? You know, what kinds of things can you do in that short and long-term goal kind of question. And then questions for us. Have real questions that that showed me you have, if I'm a recruiter, that you've actually looked at us, you've researched, and you're wondering, you know, you know, what would my first 6 months look like? When do I get to start working with clients? Or when do I get, you know, who is there somebody to mentor me as I'm getting through and learning this? I mean, all of those questions are something I would really want to know. And here's my other tip that I always give students when I'm helping them, is that nobody knows you better than you. And you should be able to answer a lot of these questions, but I don't want you to memorize anything. I want you to know it. So if I ask it in a different way, you know how to answer that. So those are the kinds of things that I think that are important, that you should know yourself. And so these questions, you really should just know about who you are, and they need to be genuine and they need to be authentic. So a formula is, think about what is your main idea? What do you want to get out first? And then you want to elaborate. Give me elaborate a little bit about what you mean and how it's relevant to the role, and then give me an example. Again, telling me I have a strong work ethic. um, that doesn't tell me anything, but tell me about, while I was in school, I worked 2 part-time jobs. I had my, I maintained an A, a 3.5 GPA, and I was involved in a couple different organizations on campus, and I was able to be that successful because I managed my time well. That's a better way to tell that story.
So behavioral questions are designed to try and determine how you're going to act in a situation based on how you acted in that situation previously. So you may be asked some questions about some specific things like, tell us about your experience with teamwork or problem solving or time management, or how do you make decisions, or how do you set goals, or what's your strategy in prioritizing tasks. Any of those words in that little cloud there you see could be some questions that you're asked about. So have some scenarios in mind about how you may have engaged with those scenarios, either at a previous work experience or in school or just throughout life. Any situation will help you be able to demonstrate how you can be successful in those situations. So the format is pretty straightforward. You typically get something like, tell me about a time you encountered a problem with this. So it could be leadership or teamwork or taking initiative, or how are you adaptable, or how do you resolve conflict with a coworker or a manager? And then describe how you handled it. So there's lots of ways you can respond to those questions, but we do have a format that fits really well. It's called the STAR method. And answering questions this way sets you up for a very nice, clear answer in getting through the whole aspect of the scenario. So you talk about the situation, describe what happened, talk about the task or the problem associated with it, then describe the action, what you did to help resolve that, and then make sure there's a positive resolution and how that all worked out. So an example could be, I was working at my Home Depot job, and I had a customer come in that was looking for a very specific tool. The customer needed it that day for a project that had to be done. We were out of stock. And so what I did was I went on the computer. I was able to see that our other store had this tool in stock. And so I talked to the customer, and she said, I can't get out there today, but I really need this. I called the store. We had a truck coming from that store within the hour, and so they were able to put that on the truck, bring it over. The customer had what she needed right away, and the customer was so happy that she called my manager, talked to corporate office, and just said how pleased she was with my customer service. So that walked through the whole, what the situation was, how you handled the task, the action you took, and then the results that ended up being really positive. Another thing could be if you're asked about teamwork, thinking about maybe you were involved in a classroom team project and none of your team members came through and did what they were supposed to be doing. You were the only one that seemed to be really engaged. And so you talked to your professor, you emailed your classmates, you were able to work something out. They finally came through, and then you all worked together to get it done and got a good grade. So you can adapt it to whatever situation seems to be most appropriate for you. But having a few of those in mind is going to be helpful so you're not thinking on the spot.
Yeah, so those are really great, Jamie, and they kind of sometimes will overlap into scenario questions. They may ask you how you handled something in the past, but they might also ask you, what would you do in a hypothetical situation that maybe you've never been through? So those questions typically will fall into the category of how would you handle the situation. It's most likely going to be a situation that you would experience within that position. So really you can, or an interviewer can use this information to determine, would this person be successful in this type of role? Would they handle the situation the way that would need to be handled in order to, you know, be efficient and be productive and get the right results? So one of the things I highly suggest is look at that role, look at the types of situations you may be put into in that role. Maybe reach out to professionals you know in an industry. If you have a mentor, if you have folks you're connected to on LinkedIn, those are really great resources to say, hey, what are some of the challenges that you faced within your position that, you know, might come up on an interview that I want to be prepared to answer? They may have specific questions that they would ask you in an interview. So it's really great to kind of think about those things ahead of time, again, like Jamie said, so that you're not caught off guard and you kind of already know how you would go in and approach a situation like that. Then that kind of filters into stress questions. So some of these questions may be really focused on the position as well and how you would handle a future situation that could be stressful. So one of those being, you know, the question, you're under a lot of pressure, right? For example, you may be called up by your manager and said, hey, you know, we have this presentation in the morning. I'd love for you to, you know, present on this topic or explain where you're at within this project. Do you think you could put that together? You may have a million other things going on at that same time. And these are all, again, hypotheticals, but what would you do in that situation if you're, you know, asked on the spot to produce something? How would you go about it? What resources would you use? Who would you, you know, delegate tasks to? Those are all things that you can kind of think about in a situation like that. Another one being, you know, you have a project deadline approaching, or maybe multiple small projects and then a large project. You don't have time to do both of them. What do you do? How do you handle that situation? What becomes priority? So those are things that you can, you know, discuss through that. You might also get a stress question that's not related to the position at all. And so that can be kind of one of those things that does throw candidates off a lot in my experiences. They're not expecting it. And so when the question does come, you can kind of freeze up a little bit. So we'll go to the next slide. So really what I want you to think about with these stress questions, this is what we're looking for. We're looking to see how you think about it, right? There might be questions with multiple right answers. There might be questions that have a single answer, but multiple ways to get there. So really take your time with these problems, take a deep breath, digest the question first of all, really get to what are they asking for, and think out loud, share with them your thought process. If they're asking you, you know, if you've got a jar full of jelly beans and you know, have to determine how many of those jelly beans are red, that can be a really daunting question. So rather than kind of internalize that and sit there, you know, panicking, staring at the camera, think out loud, talk about what your process would be. So maybe I'm going to determine there are, you know, 6 colors of jelly beans in there and, you know, go from there. They really want to do that. And sometimes they'll even kind of help in and, you know, jump in there and help you out. If you're on the right track, they'll encourage you. They're wanting to just see how you approach problems. And if you do, you know, panic in a situation and give up on a question. So again, just put your best effort in there. And even if you don't get the answer to the question, that's not what they're looking for. Okay, next slide.
Were you done, Lisa?
Yeah.
Okay. So what now? We want to actually just let you know that we have resources at Career Services. We have a virtual career center that has a lot of great resources, like virtual workshops, handouts, information regarding everything that you've heard this week. But in particular, this workshop of interviewing, a great interviewing handout. I did a mock interview workshop with engineering students this past spring, and we had employers come in and work with them. And every student goes, that handout you gave us was phenomenal. So take advantage of everything we have in our virtual career center. We also can help you with a virtual mock interview. So make an appointment with our career counselors as an action item. I mean, we can go through strategy, we can go through the actual interview, we can help you test equipment, make sure your background looks good. Take advantage of us. We're here. We've become really strong experts with utilizing Zoom and Zoom appointments. So take advantage of us. You can go down to, we have the websites down on the bottom. boisestate.joinhandshake.com, and then just our website. Our website is just a wealth of information, and it's www.boisestate.edu/career. Great information in there about like virtual interviews and just everything that we could do. So one other announcement I'd like to make, if you're interested, is a workshop we're doing in cooperation with the Gender Equity Center, and it's going to be Tuesday, June 16th, 11 to 12:30, being LGBTQIA plus and the job search. So if you're interested, you have to register through Handshake. Take advantage of it. What a great workshop we're doing next week. And Becca and Mary, who talked yesterday on resume writing, is doing that next week. So, questions? Are there questions out there?
And I've opened up the chat box, so feel free to type in that box. We do have a question from Chris. Chris asks, do you have any more advice on how to answer the "what are your weaknesses" question?
Well, I can definitely.
Go for it, Lisa. You're the expert.
I'll go for it, and I'll give you my advice from an interviewer perspective. So when we're asking the strengths and weaknesses question, we're really looking for your self-awareness in that situation. One thing I would suggest is, as you're going through that job description and you're looking for the qualities that an employer has identified in there, try not to focus on those as your weaknesses, because those are the things that they're really hoping to get out of a candidate. So, you know, kind of look at that, make sure that you're not identifying your weaknesses as being something they're looking for as a strength, first of all. I would say the next point is know how to spin your weaknesses, right? So if you do have an area that maybe on the job description, you don't have a lot of experience in that area, and that's something that they were hoping to get, whether it's a requirement or whether it's something that's a nice to have for them. Be able to identify that and say, you know, although I don't have a lot of time working within, for example, I haven't wrote a lot of internal memos, and you know, I haven't had that experience yet. That's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm really excited to dive in and to learn how to do that better and work under the mentorship, you know, and develop my skills so that I can be that expert in that area. So learn to kind of shift that, you know, I'm not strong here, but I can be.
Awesome. Yeah, I realized that I didn't use an example for weakness, and as the next slide went through, I went, I should have talked about that. So thank you, Chris, for asking that, and that's exactly how do you talk about something you've improved upon, but that an organization and a recruiter is looking how insightful you are to your own to yourself.
And we have a question from Jason. Jason's asking, what time frame is appropriate to send a follow-up thank you note, and how can you make that do more work and help you stand out more? So how can you help those thank you notes set you apart?
Let Lisa answer that one.
There's no standard time frame that I really would suggest. If you're sending via email, you can do it as soon as an hour later in that same day. If you have an interview in the morning, you can send it at the end of the day. You can send it the next day. I would do so within the next few days So don't let too many days go by before you thank them. But it will keep them on your radar or keep you on their radar and help there. So if you are sending something via mail, I mean, you can just pop it in and usually it'll get there within the next day or two.
Great, thank you.
Do you have a preference, Lisa, in email or handwritten notes?
Preference, not really. I mean, emails are always great, and that's completely fine because I realize, you know, people are very busy, and the fact that they've taken the time to write an email is, you know, especially if it's personalized, right? You can get the email that says, you know, thanks for your time. It's even better if they have a little note from your conversation, right? Like, thank you so much for sharing with me these details specifically. You know, that really shows me the genuine interest in the role and that they found a lot of value in the interview. But it is kind of nice sometimes, every once in a while, I'll get a card in the mail, and it just kind of is just a really nice thought.
Great, thanks.
Anything else, Jamie?
No other questions yet.
Give it a few more minutes and.
Yeah.
How about the career services team? Any questions from you that you have? Lisa's been a phenomenal champion of our office, working with us on a lot of our career fairs and panels and some other things. So if you have any questions about the interview process. Actually, I do have a question. So would it be out of line for somebody to ask, like, so what is Lamb Weston's, you know, what kinds of precautions has, you know, Lamb Weston taken, you know, with the COVID? If people have been working, you know, remotely as a new employee, would I be working remotely? Could that be a question I could ask?
That's an excellent question. And I've been asked that actually a lot already, you know, since we started dealing with the COVID pandemic. And so what I would suggest is actually, yes, asking that question, because it really does come back to that. What would my first 30, 60, 90 days look like? First of all, you're looking at your safety. How has the company handled it? Making sure that you feel comfortable jumping into an organization with the setup that they have in place. It also lets you know what that, you know, first experience would look like. Right now, our office is closed for the time being, so folks are starting from home. They are working, you know, remotely, and so it's a good thing to know that you would need to be in that scenario. What does equipment look like? How would I be engaged with my team? These are all really great questions to ask because it does really fall in line with what is this role going to look like. And if there's anything they can't answer for you, sometimes these things are kind of up in the air. We don't have all the answers right now, but they do definitely appreciate being asked those questions.
Great, thank you. We talk about that in our career development meetings. Anything else, Jamie? Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say that, you know, you guys mentioned the Career Center and those resources earlier. I really highly suggest candidates to take advantage of that. It's such great experience, and especially if you've never done a video interview before, the first one's really daunting. It really is. You jump in there and your nerves are going, you're trying to test technology out, and although you've prepped and done everything, it's just that first one is just getting through it. And so you don't want to have that experience while you're interviewing with an employer if you don't have to. So take advantage of those resources, get some tips and feedback. But when you do jump into that video interview, you're going to feel so much more confident.
Great, thanks for the shout out.
We do have one more question. At what point is it appropriate to talk about pay?
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, at least in my experience and how my processes have worked, work with your recruiter directly on those questions. That's not really a question that you want to have with a, say like a panel interview or an interview with the manager, unless the recruiter has said, hey, bring that up in the interview, those are really questions for another time. So I would say, you know, if you're having that more intimate interview with a hiring manager or, you know, other members of your team, that's definitely not something you're going to want to discuss at that point. So I would say just leave that question for a one-on-one conversation with your recruiter.
And we have one more. What about when they ask how much pay I expect to have? So a little clarification question on that.
Yeah, I actually ask that question to almost every candidate that I interview. And I ask that question not necessarily to be able to pinpoint, you know, what we're going to pay them. A lot of people are very cautious in answering that question because they don't want to set themselves too short or be kicked out because their expectations are too high. So what I would suggest is just providing a general range. Do a little bit of research and prior to your interview or having that conversation with a recruiter, and look at what the industry average is out there. Kind of know what the pay looks like. Know that you're going in, you know, if this is one of your first positions or if it's an entry-level role, you can kind of get a feel for what that pay will look like. Let them know that you're negotiable. Let them know that you've done a little bit of research. Here's kind of where you're thinking that this position will come in. And that you know, you're flexible if that's a little bit inside or outside of what they were expecting. Because what that is going to let me know is that you're genuinely interested in the role, you have a good feel for it. I'm also wanting to make sure that I'm not going to take you through the process and you get to the end and you're disappointed by, you know, where we might come in and vice versa. So I would say definitely answer the question, but don't feel like you need to lock yourself into like a specific number.
Great questions and great answers.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Looks like that might be it.
Well, I want to thank everybody for attending. I also want to thank Lisa. Awesome. Thank you for working with us for the last few weeks and really helping us really hone down this presentation and helping us think about it from a different lens. Truly appreciate that and your advocacy of Boise State. Anyways, we will have this up within the next few weeks up on our website. And but if you have any questions, please reach out to the career services. We're here to help you. I cannot stress enough, make an appointment with one of our counselors, go through a mock interview, interviewing strategies, whatever you need, we're there to help you. So thank you. And have a great rest of the week. A couple days left.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.